Hi there, science fans. Welcome to another exciting episode where we explore the wonders of the universe. Have you ever jumped on a trampoline? It's such a fun way to feel like you're defying gravity, even if it's just for a moment. It's like flying for a few seconds, right? That brief moment when you're suspended in the air feels magical. That's because you're fighting against gravity, the force that keeps you on the ground. Gravity is always pulling you back down. Gravity is like Earth giving you a big hug. It's a force of attraction that pulls objects toward the center of the Earth. It's what makes things fall down, not up. When you drop something, gravity pulls it straight to the ground. Without gravity, you'd float away. Imagine being in space where there's no gravity to keep you grounded. Gravity is why we have oceans, why the moon circles the Earth, and why you don't fall off the planet. It's essential for life as we know it. Now imagine if we could just turn off gravity for a bit. Just 10 seconds. What would happen? Everything would start floating around. Hold on to your hats because things are about to get wild. Without gravity, our world would be a chaotic place, so let's be thankful for this invisible force that keeps everything in order. Imagine you're drinking a juice box. Suddenly, whoosh, gravity disappears. You look around in shock as your juice box starts to float away from your hand. It's not just the juice box. Everything around you begins to rise. The books on the shelf, the lamp on the table, even the chair you're sitting on starts to lift off the ground. Your juice box would float up, along with everything else that isn't tied down. The room would look like a scene from a sci-fi movie, with objects drifting aimlessly in midair. You'd see pens, papers, and even your pet cat floating around, completely weightless. You wouldn't fall off the Earth, though. The planet's gravity is still there, just temporarily weakened. You'd remain grounded, but everything else would be in a state of freefall, creating a surreal experience. You'd just feel very light, like an astronaut in space. Imagine the sensation of floating with no weight pulling you down. It's a feeling of freedom, but also a bit disorienting. You could jump really high, even touch the ceiling. With gravity weakened, your jumps would be much higher and longer. It would be like being on a trampoline, but without the need for any equipment. But remember, what goes up must come down. Once gravity returns to normal, everything would start to fall back to the ground. The floating objects would descend, and you'd feel your weight returning. 10 seconds might not seem like much, but trust me, it's long enough to cause quite a stir. In those brief moments, the world around you would be in complete disarray. Cars would bump into each other, floating momentarily before crashing back down. The streets would be chaotic, with vehicles colliding and people trying to regain their balance. People would go flying if they were running. Imagine the confusion and surprise as everyone suddenly finds themselves airborne, only to come crashing back down moments later. It would be pure chaos. The brief loss of gravity would turn the world upside down, creating a scene of utter pandemonium. But once gravity returns, everything would settle back to normal, leaving you with an unforgettable experience. Now let's think bigger. What about the oceans and their vastness? Without gravity, the water wouldn't stay put. It would start to rise, maybe even drift off into space. The air we breathe would also be affected. It could start to float away too, leaving us breathless. Luckily, 10 seconds isn't long enough for all the air to disappear completely. But still, it's a scary thought, isn't it? Imagine the chaos. Imagine looking out your window and seeing the ocean swelling up like a giant bubble. And the birds? They'd be having a tough time trying to fly without air to keep them up in the sky. After 10 seconds, gravity would come back online, but those 10 seconds would feel like an eternity. Things that were floating would come crashing down. Imagine the chaos as everything from leaves to cars plummets to the ground. People would be relieved to feel the ground beneath their feet again. But the mess, streets would be littered with debris, and the aftermath would be overwhelming. Can you imagine everything that was floating falling back to Earth at the same time? It would be a sight to behold, but also a scene of utter chaos. It would be like a giant messy rain of objects and water. The sheer volume of items crashing down would be unprecedented. So while it's fun to think about what would happen if gravity took a break, I'm glad it's always there to keep us grounded. The stability it provides is something we often take for granted. It makes you wonder though, what if we could harness such a powerful force? Will we ever be able to control a force as powerful as gravity? What do you think? The possibilities are endless, and the future holds many mysteries yet to be unraveled.